The Bible is arguably the most enigmatic book of all time. Its depth and richness of narrative, songs, poetry, law, prophecy, and eschatology is unrivaled in its class. This text confounded many for centuries. Attributed to the divine inspiration of the Most High Yah, only a select few were privileged to be able to unravel the mysteries that lie beneath. Today, there are tons of academic gatekeepers who have been able to unlock this coded script using a variety of techniques mostly unknown to laymen. However, today this is no longer the case. Thankfully, DivineProspect has spent 15 years playing the spook who sat by the door to gather intel on how to best approach the text and get the most objective understanding possible. He is making these techniques available to the general public in the upcoming KHM Holistic Research Paradigm for Bible study classes. For the first time, be able to read the text the way it was intended by the author to his immediate audience. Once you've been able to successfully decipher the scripture, you will then learn how to map it to modern times and yield a harvest of actual results. Sign up today by going to www.patreon.com/DivineProspect and join the $50 tier to reserve your spot. Seats are extremely limited, so take advantage of this opportunity before it's too late. Peace and shalom.
Hello, we wanted to give a quick testimonial of our experience with Natural Path to Eden, headed by Ron Shields. Our daughter was suffering with some very aggressive eczema, developed about 4 months after she was born. It started out with little rashes and then it really progressed to some very aggressive, dry, scaly spots. Sometimes the whole skin was raw, and it was really discomforting to us as parents. Of course, we tried a lot of different products. What were some of the products we tried there?
We tried everything. We tried baths, we tried homemade remedies, we tried everything that was recommended to us. We tried changing our diet.
Vino, aquifers, and we knew that if, going to the doctor, our son had eczema as well. They just prescribed steroids and things that actually don't cure the issue or help it go away. It just suppresses the immune response. So I ran into Ron at a Shabbat gathering and asked him, because I saw his presentation on eczema a few years ago, and asked him about, some help that we can receive for eczema. He recommended a cream and vitamin D probiotic drops that we administered as recommended, and we began to see immediate changes. Elena's skin was like night and day.
Yeah.
We were definitely happy and comforted by the results. No complaints, and she's a much happier baby now. She used to always scratch, always irritated. Everything caused her eczema to flare up, and now it's a lot more comforting for us that she's not going through that same suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the network, man. That's crazy. Wow. The whole network is tripping. All right, let me know if you can hear me, see me. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. Let me turn this mic up. Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Let me know if you can hear me and see me. Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Hit 1 if you can hear me and see me. Oh, man, that was a rough start. Rough start. I said a whole lot and nobody can hear me. This is crazy. It's a network issue. I just changed to my backup internet and everything seems fine now. So yeah, this is crazy. I apologize for the technical difficulties, y'all. And again, I don't even know how much y'all heard, if y'all even heard anything. And this mic keeps going down. So I don't know how much y'all heard, but anyway, let me show you if I could try to salvage some of that. Why does it keep going down? Yeah, hold on. Let me see something real quick. Man, this is crazy. Yeah. Let me see. Audio. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Oh, you still can't hear me? Julie, daughter of Zion, said nothing. I don't know if that means you can't hear me. Is that what that means when you say nothing? Hello? Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Can you hear me? Marlo says it's fine. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on. Medicine, you said MF brought me here. Who is MF? Not sure who that is. Oh, you talking about MF Dredson? That's who you talking about? Okay, you can hear me, Ben Yehuda. All right, good. John Pete. All right, cool. All right. Who is number 2 Parmesan hater? Who is that? Asking me to mod him. I don't know who that is. All right, good looking MF. Thank you for the invite. Invited Medicine 111 here. Hey, you asked me to mod you, number 2 Parmesan hater. I don't know who you are. That's like you're inviting your friends to a get together at your house, and some random stranger shows up and say, "Hey, put me on the lease." What? I don't even know. You didn't even say hi. You know what I'm saying? You didn't even take it slow. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? This is crazy. Hey, babe, what's up? So yeah, it seems like y'all can hear me. So okay. Shout out to Caribel. I don't know if y'all heard the shout outs. I'm gonna go back to the top then. Man, this is crazy. I was live for like 20 something minutes and nobody can hear me. It's crazy. Shout out to Apothecary Custom, Yaramaya Ban Yasharala, Shalom, Eli Mackin, Shalom, Julie, daughter of Zion, Shalom, Aaron Speaks, Peace, Shalom, You Love Yah, Shalom, K Israel, Shalom, That One Servant, Shalom, Nazarene of the Way, Shalom. Let's see. MF Dredson, Shalom King. Thank you for showing up. New Earth, Shalom. V Brand, Shalom. Number 2 Parmesan hater. Shalom to you too. Nilante, Shalom. Chief Ara, Dar Yawesh, Yash, Shakar, Shalom. Bo Yeshua, Shalom. Medicine 1111, Shalom. Let's see. Who else we got up in here? John Pete, Shalom. Ben Yehuda, Shalom. Marlo Eugene, Shalom. Kerubel, Shalom. Let's see. Sincerely, Cherie, Shalom. Booyak Asha, Shalom. Yes. I already know you have questions. As always, Booyak Asha. I already know. 617, let's get it. Shalom. Emmanuel Griffin, Shalom. Gels, MSK, Shalom. Nazarene Essence TV, peace, love, and light. What's going on? All right. So, I don't know how much you heard earlier, but it's all good. Most important thing is, y'all willing, I will be in Cleveland, Akron, Ohio this upcoming week from Monday to Wednesday, right? I was given a heads up in our community tab. So If you need contact information, all my ministry contact information is in the community tab post that I did, letting everybody know I'll be in Cleveland, Akron, Ohio, Monday to Wednesday. We're going to do another dinner get together like we did in Dallas. And when I get there, I'll give you more details on a live stream, letting you know what's going on. But I'm giving you a heads up now that I will be in Akron or Cleveland, in that same area, Ohio, this upcoming week. Okay, y'all willing, if everything goes well. I just got the green light from my job after they scheduled it midweek. I got the green light yesterday, so everything is Gucci. All right. All right, cool. All right. That's the first thing I said, right? Just wanted to let y'all know. Second thing I said is, hey, if anybody here would like for me to respond to Billy Carson's work, I had about maybe 3 to 5 people ask me about that past week or so, and address some of his content. Let me know. A lot of stuff that he teaches comes from like the Black conscious community, so a lot of it, the information has been disseminated by Zachariah Stitchin, and then was picked up by Malachi Z. York, and then from the Nubians, it started to be pervasive to a lot of people who were dissidents of scripture, and they decided that they want to find something else to latch on to because they feel that there's an esoteric information that pastors and mores and overseers and so forth have been keeping from them, and nobody has discipled them properly or showed them how to root themselves in the foundation of the text. But I tell you all the time, what we teach here is the ancient Israelite culture. And we get 50% of that from the literature, the cultural literature that we call the Bible, which is the immaterial cultural element. And then we get the other 50% from the archaeological record, or what we call the material cultural element. And when we fuse the two together, then we use that to reverse engineer and reconstruct what that ancient culture is. And then we map it one to today's time. And then we give the life application from there. And with that being the goal, is to prepare our people for the King's soon coming arrival. But in the interim, we got work to do, and that is to build our communities. Reach out to the lost sheep, build our communities, strengthen our people, and provide solutions to their societal ills. All right. Okay. Shout out to Cam Ibed Yisrael. Shalom, feed the spirit. Shalom. So if y'all want me to do any reaction videos or whatever responses to Billy Carson, just send me the content. I'll review it, and then I'll go ahead and respond to that. Right. I think I did, like I said earlier, a couple of years ago, but I have no problem doing it again. It's no problem. Right. But if you really want to see somebody in the realm of apologetics that actually has done great work in regards to this Anunnaki and and like the Ancient Alien show became very popular because of Zachariah Sitchin, and stuff along those lines. Hey, let me know. Right? But Michael Heiser, and he's gone. He's not with us no more, but he's done exceptional work in that field. And I have a lot of his content on my Patreon as well. Don't forget to sign up for the Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. Sign up for any tier, but if you want to get those classes to really learn how to decipher and break down the scripture, sign up for a $50 tier to get locked in for the classes, as well as enjoying all the other over 1,000+ content that we have on the Patreon with so many exclusives that's not shown here. All right. So y'all want reaction videos? That seemed to be the new thing. Podcasts and reaction videos seem to be the new thing, right? So if y'all want me to do reaction videos, I got you. If you want me to start first with Billy Carson, then send me a Billy Carson video. Send me one where he's making some extraordinary claims so we could break it down frame by frame, word by word, and we can parse through it, and I can show you whether it's factual or whether it's fiction. And I would love to debate him as well. That would be great. You know what I'm saying? But I highly doubt he's going to do that. Right. But again, I was also saying that then there's people that come on this channel and they make comments. And in the comments, they say stuff like, oh, the Bible is fake and the Bible is contradictory. And why are people following the Bible? And I simply say, thank you for sharing it. All right. Thank you for your comment and your feedback. Would you like to have a live discussion on this? And they decline. That happens. And they want to keep messaging, but they decline. I'm like, well, why are you declining? If you're so confident about the statements that you're making, then we should have a conversation. So then they proceed to leave a comment about,
a contradiction, a surface contradiction in regards to Kings and Chronicles that they probably Googled online somewhere, and said, look, see, the Bible is contradictory. Well, we've worked that out years ago. You just probably not up on how that's done, but I'd be more than happy to share with you if you're willing to come on the line and have a grown man conversation, which they don't want to do, right? Y'all know I'm amicable and respectful towards my guests. I give them ample amount of time to talk, and sometimes we talk for hours, right? So we can resolve whatever. But if you have some smoke, or you want the smoke, right? Because I can always play the Surgeon General, right? I role play and I become the Surgeon General, right? And I gotta warn you that smoke is not good for your spiritual health. You don't want that smoke, because then you're gonna have to go back, re-examine some stuff, and then come back and present us with a brand new thesis. Okay? Because we take this step by step. All right. Shout out to all my students in the class, the KHM Holistic Research Paradigm for Bible Study classes. We moving in those classes. I'm having fun doing the classes. The next element we're doing is the cultural analysis. Right. We just did the grammatical lexical analysis, and then we're gonna go into the contextual analysis. Right. And we're starting with Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 1. And there's so much stuff that they're learning simply from that one verse that they have never discovered before, right? So if you want to get in on these classes, again, I have a preview up on this channel. Then sign up for the Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect, and sign up for the $50 tier to get locked in, okay? All right. Okay, so let's start with the questions, right? But if anybody wants to smoke, let me give y'all that link too. This is the link for the people that want to smoke, who have an issue with something that I teach, or issue with the Bible, Israelite culture, or whatever along those lines. If you want to smoke and you're willing to have a conversation, I'm more than happy to talk to you, and I'm more than happy to keep it amicable, right? There's the link. All right, so let me see if there's any questions. Let's see. All right, one question. What are your thoughts on what other books out of the 204 books mentioned in 2nd Esdras 14:14? I don't know what you mean. What are my thoughts on those books? What do you mean? Do I think it's authentic? Do I think it's something we should read, we should follow? Let me know, man. I could pull that up too. Let's pull that up. You said 2nd Esdras 14:14? 2nd Esdras 14:44. Okay. Yeah, I know I read that some time ago. I don't see 2nd Esdras 14:44, so you might be referring to something else. Not sure what you're talking about. What are you talking about, Esdras 14:44? I'm not sure what you're talking about, bro. You gotta give me some more information on that Booyakasha. Yo, Booyakasha, you can click the link too. We can have a conversation so I can see what you're referring to. Just let me know. Okay. Chief Ara, no, I did not see that. I mean, we cooked them over here too a couple of times. So him getting cooked is just like, you know what I'm saying? At this point, it's just like, you know what I'm saying? But no, I didn't see that. If you want, definitely email me the link, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Shoot me the link so I can take a look at it, my brother. Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to Damon Williamson in the building. Shalom. Michael Van Nett or Mikhail Van Nett. Shalom. Booyaka Shout. Can you give me more feedback, more information on what you're asking? Now, I'm gonna show you this, right? Because when it comes to the educational wing here at KHM, I mean, I expose our followers, our supporters, our members. I expose them to all the information, right? That's why you even see it on Patreon, right? Shout out to Sean McGee. What's going on, King? I sent you a message, so hit me back, my brother. So I exposed them. Shout out to Jaslyn Berry that just joined. I exposed them to a wealth of information on different topics and subject matters. Here's one thing that we have on the Patreon, right? Let me show it to you real quick, right? And this is crazy when people say, "Oh, people that follow the Bible, you know, they don't read any other book," and they like, "What? What? Yo, that be tripping me out, man." Because I'm like, yeah, you really are not paying attention. So so I have a book up here on a pseudepigraphal works. Let me see if I can find that. Let me see if I can find a pseudepigraphal works for you. Oh, Emmanuel, he meant Baruch, right? Not Esdras. Wow, Booyakasha, man. You must be tired today. Are you tired today? You tired? What's going on? Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate the support, King. I've been looking for content from you for a long time, man. Hopefully everything is well. Okay. Let me see. Baruch 1444. All right, let's go to Baruch then. Baruch 1444. I don't see that either. Hey, somebody share the link in the chat. Share the link in the chat. Let me bring up the pseudo picker for work right quick. Let's see. All right. So we share throwback books like this right here. Right? Stuff like the Old Testament, pseudepigrapha, apocalyptic literature and testaments, right? The original one, this is from edited by James H. Charlesworth. Okay. This was done in 1983, right? And we have all of these texts: the Sibylline, Oracle, Treatise of Shem, Apocryphon of Ezekiel, Apocalypse of Zephaniah, the fourth book of Ezra, Greek Apocalypse of Ezra, Vision of Ezra, Questions of Ezra, Revelation of Ezra, Apocalypse of Shadrach, 2 and 3, Apocalypse of Abraham, Apocalypse of Adam, Apocalypse of Elijah, Apocalypse of Daniel, right? Then we have the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, Testaments of Job, Testaments of the 3 Patriarchs, Testament of Moses, Testament of Solomon, Testament of Adam. So all these books I've read, I've vetted, and in the process of authentication, they do not pass. And there's various reasons why they do not pass. Most of them being very, very late in the game. All right. Oh, second Esdras 1442. That's not what you said the first time. Okay, so let's go to second Esdras 1442. And pull it up here. All right. All right. And the Most High gave understanding to the 5 men, and by turns they wrote what was dictated in characters which they did not know. They sat 40 days and wrote during the daytime and ate their bread at night. Is that what you wanted me to read? Let's read the rest of it. As for me, I spoke in the daytime and was not silent at night. So during the 40 days, 94 books were written, And when the 40 days were ended, the Most High spoke to me, saying, make public the 24 books that you wrote, and let the worthy and the unworthy read them. But keep the 70 that were written last, in order to give them to the wise among your people. For in them is the spring of understanding, the fountain of wisdom, and the river of knowledge. And I did so. So those books are not itemized and they're not listed out. We don't know which books those are. So definitely cannot authenticate something that I don't know what is to go and even look for it, right? And those books that they're referring to there is probably never going to be public ever, because it's supposed to be for a specific group of people during that time. So I can't comment on something that I don't have or that I don't know about, right? I mean, what is your take on that, right? Do you know what those books are? If so, definitely share with us, right? Oh wow, Aaron. Sorry to hear that, brother. I'm gonna keep you in prayer. All right. Hold on 1 second. All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep you in prayer, Aaron. Sorry to hear that, my brother. All right, definitely gonna keep you in prayer, and I appreciate your support as always. Shout out to Gold Mine Entertainment's my brother Dre Lloyd in the building. What's going on, King? Let me see. Okay, so Booyakasha, what is I don't understand what I mean. You have some insight you want to share? I don't have any insight on that because I don't know what those books are. So but if you have any insight on that, please share with us. I'm all ears. Okay. What's going on, Gene? And then I have somebody on stage I'm gonna bring up in 1 second. Shalom, Divine. Since we're on the topic of books, what is your opinion of the book titled "The Gospel of Peace" and those who use the doctrine of veganism? They claim eating meat is a sin. Yes, the Gospel of Peace is not an authentic gospel. Okay, all you got to do is look up the author of that work and why he wrote a gospel that he claims is from the Essenes. That none of that can be authenticated, right? Just read scholars that speak about this work. None of that can be authenticated. This man wrote a book on his own. It's not antiquated in any way. There's no manuscripts to back it up. None of that exists, right? He was already a vegan and a Christian, so he wanted to find a way in order to justify that. Now, we do have an historical account of Nazarenes being vegetarians, not vegans. So we do have that. So some people catch wind of that, say, "Oh, look at that! We should be Nazarenes." But all the Nazarenes was not that. It was a specific sect within the Nazarenes that practiced being vegetarians. And the reason why is because they believed that all the meat that was in the markets or being offered was offered to idols. So they refused to eat that. Matter of fact, if you really want to get froggy, go back to my debate with Ali Muhammad back in 2015. He brought that up and I tore him up on that. Pause. It's crazy. All right. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so let's see. Is there, I think you meant to say, is there a future perfect tense existed in the Hebrew language? Yes, some do purport that, especially in prophetic language. You'll see a future perfect. However, in the rules of the grammar, it's not really fixated, but it's implied when reading literature, right? Prophetic literature. And you'll find that in like the book of Isaiah, right? So if you want to go into deeper about that, definitely text me or email us, set up a call, and we'll go through that. Okay. All right. All right, DJ. Yes, I'm early for today, limited time only. All right. All right. So I'm going to bring on this guest real quick. Okay. Jeff Minter, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, bro.
Okay.
Shalom.
Shalom. What's going on? What would you like to discuss, my brother?
Yeah, I wanted to know regarding medieval Europe. So I hear a lot of Israelites teach about black people ruling medieval Europe, such as England, Scotland, Ireland, and things of that nature. I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that is that black people was not ruling the medieval period in Europe. We do have accounts of Moors prior to 1492 having vassals and territories and property in what we call the Iberian Peninsula, and some of them went as far as France as well. But actually ruling, no, that's not the case. In medieval period, most of those feudal states was controlled by the Roman Catholic Church, right? And then eventually they grew to a point where they decided after the Age of Enlightenment to become independent states away from the Roman Catholic Church, but not fully separated away from it, such as like Portugal and Spain was still linked up to the Roman Catholic Church. But nonetheless, we don't have a huge swath of black people ruling with an iron fist all of Europe. Like there's no account of that. Right now, people will come out and bring out these sources where the word swarthy is used and stuff like that, but they're taking it out of context, right? Swarthy was a pejorative idiom that was used about individuals who were ruling, who the people did not like, right? So nobility would write this because most of the commoners could not read or write, right? So people were bringing out like random sources like that, but don't vet the source before they read it or even understand the context behind it. So that's my position in regards to that.
Okay. Because me personally, I'm in agreement with a lot of the brothers that say that we ruled medieval Europe. And
You agree that we were the Anglo-Saxons too? You agree with that as well?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Because
so what
even
would be
when
your
you
primary response to that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because even when you observe many of the ancient coins of the Anglo-Saxons and you observe the phenotype within those coins, you see the thick lips and the broad nose. So that's a telltale sign that they were black people. And even the ancient Viking coins as well, and a lot of the ancient manuscripts, you observe the features and they have thick lips and broad noses. So that's one sign I was able to glean based off, what brothers are saying.
So the question is, at what point did we stop ruling in Europe? What's the time? What's your timeline?
It really depends what region we're talking about. If we're talking about England, I would say during the early 1800s.
1800s?
For sure.
So we were responsible for colonization and imperialism that spread out until all the four corners of the earth?
I wouldn't say we was wholly responsible for it, but we played a large role in it. Because
So which kings are you saying and queens are you saying did not have their hands tied up in that all the way up to the 18th century?
I mean, I would say they all had their role to play in it, because even when, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the Royal African Company that was chartered by King Charles II.
Correct. And that's what helped with a lot of that cargo shipment of human beings.
Right.
Hmm.
And when you look into a lot of the contemporary literature of that time, you will see that he was nicknamed the Black Boy and he was referred to as a black man. So for me,
What source says that he's referred to as a black man? What source would you point to? And we could just pull it up and read it.
You could go to a source called The Secret Services of John Mackey, where it's describing his sons
Mackey.
and his grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. The Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey. That one.
Right.
And in that, what page do you have that at? I can read it.
Give me a quick second.
Sure, take your time.
Bear with me, brother. Because I'm basically, right now, I'm on the PDF on Google Books. And I'm trying to, give me a second.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, if you go to page...
Can you share your screen? Is that possible? Can you share the PDF on your screen?
I don't think it gives me the option to share screen on this.
Are you on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, it does, but I think the way you find it is a little bit different. So.
Okay. Matter of fact, hold on.
Okay.
Does it allow me to switch the camera?
Yeah, it should allow you to switch your camera. Let me see. I got to get on my phone and see if I can talk you through it real quick. Let me see. Let's see. Okay. It should be a vertical 3 buttons, 3 little dots that you should be able to click on. Do you see that option?
Yeah, I see that option, but below it says more. Are you talking about that one?
Yeah, try that.
Okay, then it shows comments, settings, and cancel.
Okay, let me see. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Let me see if I can add myself. Oh, I'm already there. All right, hold on. I'm gonna read this. Okay, so when you click more, let me see. Yeah, I don't see that option. I don't see it either. So I'm not sure, but yeah, you could read it. You could read it.
All right, brother. So it's page 40. It says, I'll just get straight to the point.
Okay.
Or should I wait for you to get to page 40?
No, go ahead.
All right. So it says, he is a gentleman, every way well bred, doth not love business, is well affected to the constitution of his country. He is of a black complexion, not so tall as the Duke of Northumberland, yet very like King Charles, turned of 30 years old. So you have Charles, the Duke of St. Albans, who was one of the illegitimate sons of King Charles II. He was rendered to have a black complexion. And then you have his grandson, Charles Fitzroy, Duke of Grantston. It says, his grandson to King Charles II and son to the heirs of Bennett, Earl of Arlington, is a very pretty gentleman, have been abroad in the world, zealous for the constitution of his country, a tall black man, about 25 years old. You're on mute, brother.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Next thing I want you to do is pull up a painting of King Charles, the Duke of St. Albans. And
yeah, I've seen them. It's all whitewashed.
I mean, also it's whitewashed.
Absolutely.
Okay. So even though it was painted around the same time that memoir was around, they whitewashed it.
Well, that's what they purport, because
okay,
the literature isn't matching the way in which he's depicted in the painting. So one can only surmise that the way he's depicted in the painting is just a falsified image, because even when we look at ancient Egyptian history, they've remodeled and falsified certain images to make it seem like the ancient Egyptians were fair-skinned. But we understand that the ancient Egyptians were dark complexioned people.
Well, ancient Egyptians themselves, their paintings are still up, untouched and unbleached, and we see them as being as a ox blood color. That's what they typically depicted themselves as. So we still have a authentic representation of the ancient Egyptians
Oh yeah,
on the
for sure.
wall. So
For
what I'm
sure.
saying is, so you're saying there's multiple paintings was made of Charles. So you're saying none of those paintings are authentic in representing him. So like the term that's used there for black, did it have any connotations other than what we use today, or did it mean black in regards to pigmentation? Because
Yeah, babe.
mhm.
So I was just gonna say, brother, based off, because during the same time period, you can look at encyclopedias in the way in which they describe Africans, and it's the same thing. They described Africans with a black complexion. So we know that Africans that being described as a black complexion is with regards to their pigmentation. So one can only surmise it was the same thing here because he was also described with a black complexion.
Got it. I have an excellent article that I would love to read for you that responds to those claims of dark and swarthy in regards of certain rulers in the UK as well as mainland Europe. And they explain like what those epithets actually mean, or those adjectives that's used like swarthy, black, and others in representation of those individuals. And we get that based on contextual data of that time period, right? The usage of it outside of just that memoir and how it's used elsewhere, and where it's explained what that actually means. I would love to share that with you. So if you give me a second, let me pull it up and see if I can find it. I forgot the name of it. See if I can find it in my Google Drive, and I'm gonna share that with you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else you would like to share? Other than that, and well, I guess my main question is, for you bringing that out, what relevance does that have to us today? Maybe you want to enlighten us on the relevance of that today.
I just wanted to see your perspective on it because I just never got to really hear you touch on this subject matter. So I just really wanted to see your perspective on it, just to
Okay.
see, if you had the same school of thought as the other
Mhm.
brothers in the Israelite community.
Okay. And when we say Israelite communities, typically, mostly, not exclusively, brothers of the One West variant, because a lot of this information was being brought out in the early 70s, when the One West School, which we call the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, came out with a lot of this information and sharing it. And I know a few elders that are still in the One West variant camps, and shared a lot of that with me as well, and showed me the old videos that was on like cable television, right, on like channel 69, 68, that we would view it in the Bronx when I lived in New York. And it was something very fascinating at the time, because there was information that a lot of people really were not aware of at the time, and really did not have access to fact check the things that was being shared with them. And that's the most important thing, right? If you share that with me and I take that for surface value, then I'm doing the wrong thing, right? Because I should be able to go back and say, okay, let me just go and research this and see what this has to do with anything, right? If this is even valid, or if it is valid, then what else are they lying to us about, right? It becomes some like conspiratorial rabbit hole that I would have to go down in order to actually look into it further and try to figure out, why would they hide this? Like, why would this be a secret? And why would people who are black ruling Europe get involved in the transatlantic slave trade? Why would they traffic human beings and, colonize native indigenous peoples? For what purpose? Right? Why would they want to do that? I
I
mean,
mean, for me,
they
it's
had
real
enough.
simple because
They had enough feudal servants in those feudal states to do so. So, what made them want to create an empire to enslave more human beings?
I mean, for me, it's just mainly for the purposes of wealth and power, really. Because even there's certain regions in Europe where the natural resources is destitute, right? So they wanted to go to these different regions where the natural resources was much more in abundance and colonize and enslave these indigenous peoples for free labor as
So
a
exploit.
symbol of wealth and power.
Yeah. So what were these Israelites who did this?
Yeah, a good portion of them were.
So there were Israelites in Europe that wanted to expand because of the lack of resources, and brought their expenditures and their expeditions to the west and central coast of Africa to traffic human beings who were also Israelites. Did they know that the people they were trafficking were Israel?
I don't believe so. I believe that they viewed the wide majority of Africans as Hamites. I don't believe
Okay.
I don't believe they classed the people in the continent of Africa as the same people,
Got it.
despite the same complexion.
So who would be their descendants today? If you had to point to somebody, who would be their descendants today? Because we need to hold them accountable for what they did to my ancestors. So definitely.
I mean, a lot of them are in America. A lot of them are stationed in the Western Hemisphere.
So they're in America, you said?
Absolutely.
So are those your ancestors?
Yeah.
now we got to have a different conversation now. All right. So your ancestors enslaved my ancestors. That is fascinating. That is really fascinating.
But brother, they might also be your ancestors too.
Nah, man. I already traced my ancestry. And my
Okay,
ancestry
fair enough.
I'm gonna tell you, my ancestry on my mother's side goes to the central coast of Africa, to the kingdom of Luango that existed at that time. From that lineage, from my mother's side, and from my dad's side, that goes back to the slave coast, right? So we talking about Igbo land, right, all the way to the Gold Coast. We got some mixture over there as well. So I don't have anything that traces anywhere outside of that. So my question would be for you is, would you say that DNA is insufficient in determining that ancestry, and we would have to go about it some other way to figure out who's who?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like for example, when you look at the surnames, like a lot of, especially in Africa, especially among African Americans, a lot of them have European surnames. And of course, I'm not negating the fact that a lot of them got their surnames from slave masters or whatnot.
Correct.
I'm not negating that, but what I'm also asserting is the fact that those are also their own last names as well. Because when you analyze what a lot of these surnames mean, it means someone of a black complexion, a brown complexion, so on and so forth, because that's why these surnames were given in the first place.
So,
like for example,
I
was just going to say, for example, the surname Duff or Duffy means a black complexion man. Even the surname Dunn means a brown or dark complexion man. For example, that's just 2 examples that I can think of right now.
Okay, and where do you get those definitions from?
Irish Gaelic dictionaries.
Gaelic dictionaries. Okay, so your surname is Minter, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that goes back to who during that time period?
It doesn't go back to a specific person of nobility based off what I researched, but it goes back to the Anglo-Saxons, and it basically means money.
Yeah. I mean, we even know that from its semantic range in American dictionaries as well. Minter has something to do with money as well, right? Paper and money being minted. So, yep. Okay. Well, I mean, that's extremely fascinating. And I'm gonna. I just need your email. Can you drop your email in the chat so I can send you these documents? And if you have anything, feel free to share it with me too. Let me review it. And then next time, if we catch up with each other, then we can have a follow-up discussion. How's that?
Oh yeah, for sure, bro. And one last thing I wanted to say.
Sure.
I have a book coming out based off this. Well, I'll just say theory. I have a book coming out called The Black Rulers of Medieval England, short edition. So if you want to review the book, you feel free. There's all the evidence there, and it provides contemporary evidence of the monarchy being described of a black, brown, swarthy complexion. And I also have visual representations of the paintings, the images. I mean, not the images, the coins, the statues. However they were depicted, because a lot of these depictions, they're not out there for public. They're not out there for public consumption. So you
would
really
you
have
say
to kind of.
Yeah, would you say like things like the Russian icons is representative of the Russian nobility being black as well? Is that your take?
I would say that.
So black people ruled up and down from Russia all the way to the UK?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay. And what do you
Absolutely.
think is the goal why our white counterparts would want to hide that information from us?
I believe they want to hide that information is because they pretty much want to make themselves to be out as the victors in history. So they want to have a greater self-image about themselves and for their progeny. So if they understand that they were ruling all these regions in Europe and all these different things, they're gonna have a higher self-confidence. They're gonna have a higher self-esteem about themselves.
So they just want us to believe that we were just product of slavery, transatlantic slave trade, right?
Absolutely, because that's exactly why they don't tell us that we were the Israelites. Because it gives us a lower self-worth.
And it
So I believe they
justifies.
also did that. I believe they also did that with regards to medieval Europe too.
So then, how come the descendants of those individuals who profited off of the transatlantic slave trade, how come those blacks are not ruling or in power today?
But there was a bunch of revolutions that happened. Like, for example, the French Revolution that took the monarchy out of power.
Oh, so the French Revolution, you agree that the nobility that was established after that established a white hegemony in Europe?
For sure. Because there was a lot of revolutions during that time period which changed the course of, not English history, but European history. There was a lot of upheavals. There was a lot of rebellions, and our people either got killed off, they got taken into America, or a lot of the West Indian islands as indentured servants, and they died of famines as well.
Wow, but your lineage survived.
I mean, yeah, of course.
No, but I'm saying if that's the case, then there's a lot of wealth that's owed to you, right? Don't you need reparations too?
I mean, that's what I mean. Because to get into all that, that's a very what do you call it? That's a very, what's the word for it, grueling task to get into, because you have to trace back generation upon generation upon generation. And me personally, I don't know whether or not my ancestors were nobles or not. My ancestors could have just been commoners.
So, as far as you can remember, where did your grandmother come from on your mom's side?
Martinique.
So the islands. So
Right.
where did your father's grandmother and grandfather come from?
They're from Ghana.
So possibly on your mother's side, they could be slaves that was brought over here, and your father's side could be other.
Yeah, well, my father's side, I don't believe that they derive from, what do you call it, the Europeans. I believe that they were always in Africa. But in terms of my mother's side, there's a good possibility that they were in Europe.
Okay, as part of the nobility, correct?
I wouldn't, as I said, I wouldn't go as far as to say nobility, because that's only a small population of people. I might they could have been commoners, as I said, or just even a part of the serf class, really, because a large population of Europe was of the serf class or the villain class.
Yeah,
so
that's true. And that's what I was saying. They ruled as feudal states, right? So you had a lot of serfdom in those feudal states, and that was the majority of the populace there, right? I was just concerned if you knew that your lineage, patrilineal lineage, goes back to nobility, or if your father or your mother's matrilineal lineage goes back to nobility. Because if so, that's a whole new dynamic that needs to be discussed in the public. And if your book is going to reflect that, I would definitely love to read that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my book touches on it. It basically gets straight to the point regarding the English nobility from the time of William the Conqueror all the way up until Queen Charlotte. Because even Queen Charlotte, her contemporaries described her as a mulatto. So that just gives us an inkling. It doesn't really get much clearer than that.
Now let me show you something real quick, right? Have you read this book before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I'm gonna send this over to you. I think it's very fascinating, and I have a couple of others as well I'm gonna share with you. Maybe you want to examine it, and maybe there may be something in it that you may want to add to your book, or something in it that you may want to critique, right, based on the position that you hold, right? But it's good to be exposed to other things that are out there, and other commentary, other scholarly material that may agree and or disagree with your position. And hopefully your book reflects that as well, right? Because my recommendation to you is that you also should address the opposing view as well, right? And look at what they're referring to as evidence, right? Their evidential analysis, and what they're using to disprove those claims that you're making. Because, there's tons of literature written to disprove that, right? Especially in the past, I think 20, 30 years since those claims have been surfacing, right? In recent times. So as long as you include it in your work, I think that it'll be thoroughly well-rounded, and it will be respected, because people see that you're addressing both sides and not just purporting your own claims, right? So that's just my only advice to you. Yeah, feel free to send what you have to me. If you want to send me an NDA as well, you can. I mean, I'm not going to share it, but if you want to protect yourself, if you share anything like that with anybody that's unpublished, always send them an NDA to sign first before they read your material, because people can steal your stuff out there and they can plagiarize it, etc. I'm not saying that I would, but I'm just saying to you as best practices, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate your time, Jeff. And thank you for sharing that information. Like I said, drop your email in the chat. You already know my email. Let's stay in touch. And when we follow up again with the information, we can have a different conversation about it. All right. But it's good to know that the possibility out there is that your ancestors possibly enslaved mine. So, I'm a little biased about that. Feel a way about that, but I'm going to put that aside to have an objective conversation with you. Okay. I appreciate your time, brother.
No doubt, brother. Shalom.
All right. Shalom. All right. Now that was fascinating. All right. So, Marlo, you are up next.
Oh, shalom, Mark. How you doing, man? Much love to you and yours. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute, brother. I still watch some of your content, man. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm hanging in there. So really quick,
wait, before you start, any new music?
Yeah, definitely.
You got to send it to me. Send it my way.
For sure, man. Okay. So I've been sharing the KHM calendar with my friends and family, and so we kept Pesach on the 8th, the day of the eclipse. And there was a brother who had raised the question about the counting of the days to Shavuot, the Festival of Weeks. And I'm just going to ask this question and dip off real quick because I'm out and about. But how do we get the 50 days from that time period up to the June 2nd date? Because I had a hard time explaining that to him and understanding it myself. So,
okay. That's a great question. All right. You want to drop or you want to stay on? Oh, he dropped. Okay. All right. So the question is this. Let me bring up last year's calendar, because we don't have a calendar for this year, right? Let me bring up last year's calendar, and I'll go over that real quick. That's a great question, right? Because typically we don't. Most people don't really keep the first fruits. They typically just use that as a marker to count for Shavuot, right? And that would be the Sabbath after the week of unleavened bread, right? So when you have Passover unleavened bread, and however that week falls on the calendar, that following Sabbath. So let's say that Passover falls on the Sabbath, or Feast of Unleavened Bread, first day falls on the Sabbath, or any one of those days fall on the Sabbath, then you won't count that Sabbath. It's the following Sabbath. So that following Sabbath is the Feast of First Fruits, and you count 49 days from that Sabbath, And then you count the 50th day would be that Sunday, right? The first day of the week, right? So let me see if I can bring up one of our calendars real quick and just show you what I'm talking about. Let's do this one right here. Yeah, let's do this one. All right. So I'm gonna bring this up real quick. Okay. So let me share my screen. All right. All right. This is our calendar from last year. So I'm gonna go to Abib, right? So Abib, as we have here, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? So Passover would be here. It would be killed at twilight going into the evening, and the evening would be the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread, right? So when unleavened bread ceased, which would be that following week on that Thursday, right? The following Sabbath would be the Feast of First Fruits. And then you would count 7 weeks from here, right? Which would be the 7th from last year. And then that next day or that following day, let me explain what I mean. The 7th is, so what we have on here is that we have the ancient periods of the Israelite calendar overlaid onto the Gregorian calendar. So it would be June 10th of the Gregorian calendar, which would be the 7th day of the 3rd month of the 8-month cycle, right? So June 10th would be the 7 weeks from what we saw back in April, right? Right here, first fruits, right? And then we would count that next day, which would be that Sunday, which would be Shavuot. So you count 49 days, which is 7 weeks from the Sabbath that proceeds after the end of the Feast of Unleavened Bread that week. And then you would count that 49 days or that 7 weeks. And then that 50th day, the day after, would be your Feast of Weeks or Shavuot, right? Now, if your counting does not align with that from what we have on the calendar, I'll go back and review that probably next time because I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to let my last guest speak real quick. But I'll definitely go over that on the next live stream, which I plan to do next week. Another live stream. I won't probably be able to do it this weekend, but the next live stream, that's a good question. And that's something that we definitely need to examine before Shavuot comes to make sure that we all are doing it on the appropriate date. All right. So shout out to my brother Marlo. I didn't even know you was following the calendar. All praise to the Most High, my brother. I appreciate you and look forward to chatting with you again, man. Have an excellent day. And I pray that Yah and his Ruach will be with you for the rest of the evening. Okay. All right. So next and last, Alpha King, you can unmute your mic.
Can I be heard?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, Divine, it's my first time being here using this thing. I was wondering if I think it was to your last stream. I was the one asking you regarding the lineage, whether you're what your father is or your mother is, and yeah, I was wondering how do you know what is an Israelite? Like, what I mean is like, okay, let's say you have a person who is like, because I heard white people who are like, yeah, like I have a great great grandmother who is Native American or a great great grandfather that is black. Like, I mean, like, do you think there is how far your lineage has to go back to? Does it have to be like 10 generations or something in order for you to claim it, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how we reckon that outside of like Deuteronomy 28, which a lot of Israelites use, and in the last show I was saying that we don't need to use that anymore. I don't think that suffice to prove our pedigree. But there's a lot of research that goes into that, right? So for example, right, I'll use me for example, right? So on my mother's side, my grandmother was born in St. Thomas, right? But she also had family in Totola as well and in St. John. But nonetheless, there was Dutch Jews who relocated to that island before slaves were brought there, right? And that has one of the oldest synagogues in the entire, actually it's the second oldest synagogue in the entire Western Hemisphere, right? On that island of St. Thomas, right? But also there were Christian missionaries that came and settled there as well. The Moravian Brotherhood was one of them. And slaves were brought there as well, right? So the slaves that was brought there, the majority of them, it depends, right? Because some was shifted around in the intra slave trade or intercontinental slave trade, not the transatlantic. That means slaves were traded from one island to another island, right? Or then they would go from the islands to the mainland, like North America, etc. Right? So there was a lot of switcheroos going on, and there were breeding posts as well, right? So all of that kind of is a cause for a lot of mixing with different tribes that came over here from West and Central Africa, right? But on my mother's side, her lineage goes back to the Luango, right? And one of the fascinating things I did in my research, and I'm just going through mother's lineage, I'll go through my father's lineage, try to go through that real quick before I run out of time. But in regards to my mother's lineage, going back to the peoples of Luango, right? In Christian Oldendorf's work, he speaks about Black Jews in Luango by means of a slave who told them about those communities, right, that existed in that region, right? And that kind of mentioned a little bit of what their practices are and stuff like that. Now, mind you, my grandmother, right, knows nothing about the historical aspect of it, right? But when I went and asked her about her grandmother, right, so we're talking about let me see, my grandmother was born in 1929, I think, or 1928, something like that. And then her grandmother was born, I think, maybe 60 years prior to that. So there was customs and traditions that was passed on to her that she got from her grandmother, right? Because she didn't really know her mother because she never met her mother. I think her mother died when she was like 3 or something like that. But nonetheless, from her older family members sharing information with her, um, I had a conversation with her one time and I asked her about some customs. So if she remembered this was like maybe 4 years ago. If she remembered some customs or, some practices that was done, familiar wise. And she shared some of them with me. And then I was like, that's fascinating. I went back to the book, Christian Oldendorf's book, and I looked at the customs. It was like maybe about 4 of them. One of them is like a burial practice, funerary practice, etc. That was mentioned about what the slaves did, right? Not slaves, excuse me. The Black Jews in Luango did, and how they buried their dead, and what they did for the Sabbath, right, and stuff like that. And when I spoke to my grandmother, she told me these same practices.
Right.
I was like, what? And mind you, my grandmother is not studied. She can read, right? But she's not studied. She doesn't do no history. Listen, my grandmother was a hardworking woman. All her life, she worked multiple jobs. She never had the time to do no research, no studying, anything. She believed everything on faith. And that was my grandmother. So I know it's not like she read a book and she said, oh, okay, this is cool, and then applied it to herself. She has no motive to say, oh, I'm an Israelite. She has no motive to say that. So the fact that she was telling me, like, everything she was saying lined up with what Christian Oldendorf was saying in his work, and she and her ancestry, right, through her niece's DNA test going back to Luango, right, through the matrilineal side, mtDNA. I was like, yo, what is the odds of that? Like, yo, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I started doing more research and everything like that. And that's when I saw, I learned about the synagogue that was in St. Thomas and the Jews that were there. And then it was also Jews by means of hybrids that came over there as well, from a mix of the Portuguese men who were going to the west coast of Africa and central coast of Africa and taking indigenous African wives, right? And having children with them, right? So there's a lot of information there that I've been researching maybe for the past 5 years, and stuff that I've learned when I actually had the time to research it. And I uncovered a lot of stuff that I want to put in a lecture and share it. So that would be one of many examples, right? Like, you would have to find primary sources within Africa of people who were in different regions that made claims that they discovered Black Jews in these regions. Now, how did they become Black Jews? Could it be conversion? That's a possibility. Could it be through migration? That's a possibility. When you ask them, the ones that are still there, they'll give you their oral tradition, right? And you can also parse out an oral tradition and see what elements are antiquated or old and what elements were added based on history of that region and stuff like that. So there's different things that you can do, right, to kind of discern that. But it was very fascinating that I found this information out from my grandmother, who again had no idea of this. Now, my father's side, my father has some Igbo ancestry patrilineally through his mother. He has like French and Native American and some African American as well. But through his father's side, it goes straight back to the west coast of Africa, off the border of where Igbo land is at, right? So that's where some of his ancestry go back. And then there are some Igbo that are in that region, and majority of them are Christian, but there are some of them that are Sabbatarians and some of them that are also identify as Israelites, right? And they, again, through their oral tradition, make claims that they are also Israelites, right? That's their claims, right? That's what they say is their oral tradition. And if you look at the work of Remy Alona, he does a little bit more research on that and that aspect of it, and he parses it out and he compares it with what the Jewish practices are, and sees a lot of affinities very similar to Ekpiano Oleadu, who did the same thing back in the 18th century, right?
Yeah.
So just looking at that information, at least from my lineage on my mother's side and my father's side, and seeing this, again, it requires more research, right? So one thing I would like to do is to go to these locales in Western Central Africa and actually do boots on the ground research, right? To prove whether or not it was due either conversion, if it's an authentic lineage. If so, then does the DNA line up with that according to what secular research says, right? Secular research typically places, at least on the patrilineal side, the markers, haplogroup markers being J1, J2, R1A, R1B, and some E1B1, such as what's his name, Albert Einstein's grandfather, whose DNA was sequenced, right, from his family, and he's a Jew. So there's multiple haplogroups that go back to those who claim to have Jewish ancestry or Jewish patrilineal lineage. But if any one of them is correct, then the others can't be correct, because only one haplogroup will go back to, let's say, if Jacob existed, right? If he was a real person, then he would only have one particular haplogroup. He's not going to have 4 different haplogroups. But unfortunately, we can't dig them up anywhere, right? And so we can't prove which one is the authentic haplogroup, right? But it's through mutations in the haplogroup that we can determine if migration actually occurred, as there was mixing and expression of certain genes through environmental causes, etc., right? That we can look at this data set and say, okay, is this a viable DNA account that these people can actually have a lineage that goes back to the Middle East, right?
I mean,
Yeah, brother, you got
I
it.
just, I just be like asking because I mean I know it's not your forte this thing, but I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm from Puerto Rican. My dad is Mexican, for example, right? And we, a lot of Israelites do believe that the indigenous people here in the Americas are Israelites as well. But at the same time, I don't know what to like, because I don't know exactly who I might go back to, for example. So like when I talk about these things, I'm like, people say, well, you're what your mother is, and you're what your father is, and then I'll be like, if you could be both, or not necessarily both, but like if you self identify with one, wherever go back to, like I'm just be like, if a white person or a Chinese person goes like the great grandfathers, let's say, go back to an Israelite, can he self identify as such?
Yeah. So like when I went to probably was last week, I think, when I mentioned Leviticus 24:10, and I mentioned that it says the Israelite woman's son, and it mentioned her as an Israelite woman 2 times. It said what her name was, what her father's name was, and what tribe she came from. The author intentionally put all that information in there because the child, which is her son, identified through his mother's lineage, not his father's lineage, who was an Egyptian. Now,
Right.
the only conundrum with that is that if that's the case, then that particular individual, because his father was not an Israelite, he will not have any allotment in the land, right? Because
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
according to the book of Numbers, the patrilineal lineage is the head of household. So they're the only ones that can hold land, right? And
Right.
own property, right? As far as, territory is concerned. So if it's the lineage through the mother, ethnically, you can identify through that, right? However, in ancient times, during that time period, that individual, unfortunately, the son would be unable to claim any land
Right.
because he
Right.
has
Right.
to have a pedigree from his father in order for him to actually lay claim that, okay, from the tribe of Dan, this is my family's allotment. Now, the
Okay.
interesting thing about women, as we see with Zelophehad, is that he had daughters, but he had no sons, right? Just the daughters, and they were allowed to get land because there was no sons, right? The father had no sons. We don't know that as the case with the woman in Leviticus 24:10 and her father. I don't know if they had sons or not, right? But if they had sons, then she wouldn't be able to get any property herself unless she married an Israelite man within her tribe, the tribe of Dan. And if she did that, then she would have allotment of land, right? Then that son could have been adopted by that Danite father, and then if the Danite father didn't have any progeny, then he would give his property to that Israelite woman's son, right? So you can identify ethnically however you wish through matrilineal or patrilineal. But if we're going to stay historically to the text, a lot of that patrilineal is due to land ownership, right? And
Okay.
property and allotment, right? Yeah. So for you, my brother, I would recommend to watch a documentary called Despierta Mi Gente. Have you heard of that before?
I think I heard you mention it in prior
Yeah.
shows. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Let me
mean,
see if I
I
can
do
get you.
study a lot. Yeah, yeah, I do study a lot of indigenous in Africa because a lot of Africans, so-called Africans, were brought to Puerto Rico and the
Yeah.
Americas as well.
Yeah.
So,
Have you been to the Smithsonian Museum?
nah, not really.
Yeah, you got to go visit. You got to
Oh,
go visit
definitely,
if you can. Yeah.
definitely. But
Yeah. I mean, if you have information, definitely share it with me. I mean, my email is right there. Share what you discovered. I'm gonna see what I can give to you for you to check out, and let's go on this journey together, right?
if
Because
you
I
could,
still have a
if
lot of
you,
learning to do.
yeah, if you could send me that document, how can I find that documentary though?
I'll speak to the owners of it and see if they can get you a copy,
Okay,
or
my
if they can
last,
allow me, yeah, to host the streaming for you so that you can
yeah.
check it out. Yeah.
All right, thanks, King.
You know.
My last thing, well, it kind of like my last, it's like, you know, about it's like regarding the Edomites or Edom, right?
Mhm.
Uh, who will be? I mean, I saw your video from East. You got a video called from Esau to Zionism, right? Where you were talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
how,
Mhm.
uh, so the Edomites will be the will be in the Jewish, mainly in like in the Jewish community.
Yeah, so that was my
That's a little
proposition.
deeper.
Yeah, that was my proposition when I came to that conclusion from my research in 2014. Since then, I've acquired a lot more information. We talking about 10 years ago, right? I've acquired
Yeah,
a lot more information. But what I will say is that as far as like Amalek and Edom, right, or Edom, etc., a lot of that lineage died out. But there's a remnant of it that still exists today, and from my research, it shows up in a lot of the Ashkenazim gene pool, right? And even the Polish Jewish Jewry gene pool, right? But there's also other traces that is claimed to have made its way into Africa, right?
yeah, I heard about it. Yeah,
Yeah. So there's a lot to look into with that. So if I did like a follow up, typically I don't like to draw a unwavering or absolute position. I like to give the data to people to research and come to their own conclusions. That's why it seems like even though I answered it, but I didn't answer it, but I did that purposely because my job was just to provide the data and let people take it and review it and come to their own conclusion. So the
how
next one
about
I'll
like
do, yeah.
how
Mhm.
about the people like in America, like because I personally don't like to generalize. Like a lot of Hebrew Israelites, they say, well, the Edomites are the white man or the Caucasian. Me personally, I don't like to like
Me
do
either.
such a like make a generalization like that because like I know it's been like a lot of mixing, but like let's just talk about like what about could the like the president, like a lot of presidents or a lot of the people who are like slave masters on, could they be Edomites as well? Or
Presidents, I
yeah,
don't
like I'm
know.
talking about.
Yeah, I can't say with certainty that I know of any presidents that is an Edomite. Now, there's a book called Who Was Esau Edom by Charles A. Weissman. Have you read that before?
Yeah, I
And
want to
that
buy it.
one,
I haven't read it, but I want to buy it. I actually want to buy
yeah, I
it.
could send it to you. I could just send it to you. But it makes the claim. Here it is right here on the screen. It makes the claim that some of those rulers and or leaders, political leaders,
Yeah,
are Edom. That's the proposition from this, right? This is the
yeah,
book right here, right? So you see these figures right here.
yeah,
See
yeah,
these
yeah,
figures right here? Yeah.
yeah,
They said that this is Edom's lineage or progeny right here. That's the claim. It's a very, very interesting read, I'll say. And when I did the lecture, I knew nothing about this book, right? At that time. I since come across it, I think maybe in 2015 or 16, something like that. And I read it and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. But this is not like academic material, right? Um, the person obviously who wrote this is astute and is intelligent, I could tell, right? But this is not like academic material. So if I was writing a paper or I did like a follow-up lecture, I would have to use primary sources throughout history and or sources from PhDs in academia who are experts in the field, and especially experts specifically in anthropology, in regards to like ancient people groups, right? Like Edom will be one of them, and there's a couple of scholars that are, and I've mentioned them like Mazar and others who actually touch on this subject matter, right? So I would like recommend one of their works. But this is something to read, to consider. Again, anything that's written, I consider it. When I'm saying whether I subscribe to it or not, I consider it, because to reject it is the root of ignorance, right?
yeah. That's
So
true. So
yeah, so I just like I told the other brother, saying that all, there was rulers in Europe that was all black into the French Revolution. I said, okay, well, if you want to put that in the book, that's fine. Just also make sure you include the opposing side and the opposing side's argumentation. And when you do so, you have to address the opposing side objectively. You can't throw any ad hominems in there, because it's going to be a colorful work and it's not going to be taken seriously, right? So if you want, I could send this to you. Definitely take a look at it. And there's a couple other sources just like this that talk about Edom, being, people who are in power. And some of it you'll see goes back to Esdras, right? That talks about, you know, Edom is going to be the end of the
the end
world
of the
and
world. That's
Jacob
why I do
follows
believe. That's why I believe
thereafter.
that a lot. That's part
Right.
of the reason why I do believe that a lot of like I said, I don't like to generalize. That's not my cup of tea. I'm not God's secretary to say who is going back to Esau, who is not, like. But at the same time, I do like to put things in. I do believe that a lot of people who are in power are the Edomites. That's my personal
And
belief.
my thing is, I say whether they're Esau or not, or Edom or not, the remnant that exists, and this was part of my lecture, is they're influencing, right, the spheres of power that exist today,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
If we look at it from a biblical perspective or extra biblical perspective, outside the canon, there's that reference to Edom being the end of the world, right? Like
Yeah.
it's going to usher in all of these prophecies that we see, and then after that is over, then Jacob is going to come and take the helm, and they're going to be on the reins, right? And they're going to ride with the Messiah, who's going to rule everything with an iron fist. So, I mean, again, there's tons of information out there. I think that it should all be
How about
considered.
the
Mhm.
how about this? Like, have you done research on the modern people? Like, do you believe the Sephardic Jews of today? Do you believe they are the original like Sephardic Jews, like the original Portuguese Jews?
Yeah, some of them. But the
Some of them.
interesting thing is that we have artwork from that period that show some Portuguese Jews looking black, dark
Yeah,
skin. You know what I'm saying? So you have, and a lot of that could have been mixing, right, via the Moors and others, right? But what we see today is represented, I would say, in the public eye is really fair colored Jews. Just like in Israel, right? When I went to Israel, there are some Jews that they would never put on TV because they look darker than me. You know what I'm saying? And their lineage goes back to what they claim is to Second Temple period, right?
Right.
Um, but you would never see a documentary asking them questions or doing their DNA or whatever recordation they have. And a lot of those Jews are
Are being
Bedouins.
oppressed, right?
Yeah, being oppressed is one thing, but they're Bedouins, meaning that society doesn't even want them in the urbanized areas. So they live on the outskirts. You
I
know what I'm
mean, I
saying?
heard this. I heard this. I don't know if you heard it, but I mean, it was to me an interesting claim that even a lot, not everybody, but even some of the Palestinians were Jews.
Yeah.
That there was a guy by the name of David Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, and that he identified a lot of the Palestinians as Jews as well. So I heard that as well too. Which
You got to
if
remember, yeah, if we're going by DNA, a lot of those Arabs, their DNA through their patrilineal lineage goes back to J1, J2, and some of those Ashkenazim go back to the same J1, J2 as well. So now the
Interesting.
question is, who's the real Jew if that is a haplogroup marker for that ethnicity? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we know
Yeah.
that the people claiming that they're Jews are not really the Arabs and vice versa? Right. So it's a very interesting research to do. And again, a lot of times it's based on genealogy, culture, and stuff like that. But Mohammedism, or i.e. Islam, right, uh, ruled that area through the Ottoman Empire for a lengthy period of time,
Yeah, so
right?
the claim is that that a lot of the Palestinians were at the like in 70 AD they were like poor farmers that were left there, and
Hmm.
that then I think in the 6th century or 7th century, then the Nation of Islam came and they conquered them, and that's how they became Muslims.
Muslim, yeah. I mean, that happened
Yeah,
in North Africa as well, yeah. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
absolutely.
And Saharan Africa as well. So yeah. I mean, like I said, that history is very layered. And again, to me, the turning point is when you study the Ottoman Empire, right? Because a lot of migrations happened as a result of the Ottoman Empire, and a lot of conversions occurred as a result of that as well in those regions, right? There's a good book that I have on that as well. But yeah, I would like for you to shoot me an email so I don't forget, and I can send it over to you. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Can I answer your last question, or do you
Yeah,
have
this got to
more?
be the last one because my children and my wife is about to pull up. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying? It's
okay,
gonna be
okay.
very noisy. All right, go ahead, brother.
No problem. Where did the like the hell doctrine, as we know, as Christians know it today, came from? Like the eternal. When I talk about hell, I mean like the eternal. Like you have
Yeah,
the annihilation doctrine, and you have the eternal punishment doctrine.
yeah. So there are church fathers who actually brought up that doctrine, what we call the doctrine of hell. There's this website right here that gives you some feedback on what some of them had to say about it, but it's really through the development of the church fathers and their understanding of scripture. Right now, when it comes to hell, what is my position? So Sheol is the place of the dead, right? Hades is the equivalent of Sheol, which is the place of the dead, and that's in Koine Greek, right? But then you have Tartarus, that's also mentioned in scripture, and that's a special compartment of the underworld in which the rebellious entities from Genesis 6 are housed, according to Cephas or Peter. And then you have Gehenna. Gehenna is the valley of fire, valley of destruction, because it was Ben Hinnon, but then eventually over time, by the time you get to the 1st century CE, that area, that valley became a refuge dump where refuge was burned with fire, right? The refuge was consumed with fire. And whenever Yeshua was teaching, like the Sermon on the Mount, things like that, he was in a stone's throw of that valley, right? So we have a development of the doctrine of hell, where when you die, if you're wicked, you go and you burn up. A lot of people use like Luke chapter 16, right? The last few verses where it talks about Lazarus and the rich man. And they say, oh, that's the proof right there. That's where the hell doctrine is rooted in scripture. But what they don't realize, and again, this is going to my research, and again, I posted this article in my Patreon, is that's an apocryphal interpolation, that we find in that last story of Luke chapter 16, because the language and the style, the way it's written, is very similar to apocryphal texts. So it doesn't really follow the style of the overall narrative in Luke chapter 16. But that's another conversation altogether.
Yeah,
right?
it's also like the only place where you see Hades. I think is the only, like, because Hades is the equivalent of Sheol, isn't it?
Correct. It is. It's the underworld. Yep.
It's like the only
Where the dead
time.
go.
I feel like is the only time where it's used like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's the only time where we actually see anything in reference to somebody going to there and burning and in torment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And elsewhere in the scripture, we don't see that. So Gehenna, we see that mentioned when Yeshua or Jesus says that it's better for you to be maimed, right, and go into life than to have two hands and go into Gehenna. That's what he said. He didn't say Hades. He said Gehenna.
Right.
So why would he not use Hades, right? So again, breaking that down, there's been tons of works written on it, but the development of this doctrine of going to hell after you die, which my position is, I would subscribe to annihilism, right? And annihilism, as you know, pretty much states that when your end judgment comes, like if I die and I was wicked, I will go into the abode of the dead and I will await judgment, as we see in Hebrews chapter 9. It's appointed once for all men to die, and then afterwards is the judgment. And then when that judgment happens, then whatever existence that I'm in at that time, which won't be in a fleshly body, but whatever that existence is going to be wholly consumed and destroyed. Right. People will say, oh, but the lake of fire in the book of Revelation says that's where the false prophet is going to be, the beast is going to be, and they're going to burn forever. Yes, them. It does not say that about anybody else if they end up there.
Yeah, and sometimes when it says forever, it doesn't even mean necessarily forever.
Correct. Like olam typically means as far as your eyes can see towards the horizon. Anything beyond that, we know it exists, but we just can't see it.
And
right.
It says that it's gonna, and it says that it's gonna be in the, and it says it's gonna be under the presence of the angels as well. So I'm like, do the angels are gonna be there forever?
I mean, that's a great question. So we have people like Ignatius of Antioch said, corrupters of families will not inherit the kingdom of God. And if they who do these things according to the flesh suffer death, how much more if a corrupt man by evil teaching the faith of God for the sake of which Jesus Christ was crucified, a man become so foul will depart into unquenchable fire, and so will anyone who listens to him. That's the letter to Ephesians. Second Clement says, if we do the will of Christ, we shall obtain rest. But if not, if we neglect his commandments, nothing will rescue us from eternal punishment. Then he goes on to talk about right here where he says, but when they see how those who have sinned and who have denied Jesus by their words or by their deeds are punished with terrible torture in unquenchable fire, the righteous who have done good and who have endured tortures in this life and hated the luxuries of this life will give glory to God, saying there shall be hope for him that has served God with all his heart. Then you continue on to read and see the development of this idea of being tormented in unquenchable fire. This idea is then developed. Now we know that in Greek culture, right, Greek mythology, there's this element of Hades and where people are tortured, right? So some of that spilled on into this messianic movement, and then these ideas start to develop it from that, from what's loosely based in scripture to the idea of Hellenism, right? Hellenism, everybody at that time, Hellenism was pushed onto them, where they were introduced to Greek culture, Greek language, Greek mythology, etc. And then now you have a hotbed of where these ideas are intertwined, and now you have the development of this idea of this torture place, an unquenchable fire, right? So that's again from loosely based in scripture to what we find in Greek mythology in regards to Hades, intertwine it, and then eventually you get like medieval works that tend to revive Grecian thought, right? That also introduce this idea of these grotesque creatures torturing you in hell, right? Like Dante's Inferno and others, right? So you start to get this whole mixture of all the things that's kind of weaving its way into this idea of hell that we then are exposed to in 2024. And a lot of people can't parse through it because they don't know the history of how this developed, right? They claim it's based on scripture, but they don't know everything else that was added to the ideas that's in their head, especially like this idea that Satan is this grotesque creature that's like a humanoid animal type figure with hind legs and a tail and horns. Where the hell did that come from? That's not from the Bible, right? The Bible doesn't give us any detail about creature like that. So where did that comes from? Because it's the idea people think about with pitchforks and you getting stabbed and tortured. Where did that idea come from? That's not from the Bible, right?
I mean, it's
So
weird because I'm sorry, but like it's weird because like
yeah, I'm gonna let you end off
know,
my point because my kids are here, so I'm gonna let you end off this
yeah,
point.
I know. It is weird because I see people like when it comes to hell or things like that. I see people who say, I had like you were like after like near death experience where people say they seen something, or people burning and stuff. Like there's this book. Some people say it's fake, but it's cool. It's called A Divine Revelation of Hell by Mary K. Baxter, and
Yes,
it's a
I've read
person
that.
I mean, I don't believe person like that, but there's people who claim to see things like that, and I'm like,
I mean,
where's
guess
that in the
what?
Bible?
Human beings have unrivaled vast imaginations, right? And even Paul talks about us bringing those imaginations under our control, right? So a lot of times we're influenced by pop culture and things that enter into pop culture that then become a part of our makeup of who we are. It epigenetically transforms us, right? To be predisposed to these ideas and to tack onto it our own personal imaginations. You know what I'm saying? So that's a very interesting question, and a great subject matter to dive into. But let's pick this up another time because I do have to wrap up. Okay, my brother.
I'll
All
send
right.
you the
Thank you so much.
email.
Yep.
Is Alpha Nova 5.3. That's my email. When you see it, I'll
Okay.
let you know.
I got you. I got you, my brother.
Got you.
All right. It's great talking with you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know it's precious to you. And thank you for sharing it with me. Okay.
Have a great day. Shalom.
All right. Shalom. All right, family. So we're going to wrap up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Freestyle Friday. I appreciate y'all. I see you have a lot of questions. I cannot address them right now, but please show up for our next live next week. Bring your questions over and let's dive into it and deal with it. All right. Much love to each and every one of y'all. Peace and shalom, family. Pray the Most High Ruach will cover each and every one of you, give you peace and abundance of life throughout the rest of this weekend and into next week. And if there's anything that we can do to help you or serve you, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. And if you would like to support us, sign up for the Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. All the links for other kinds of support for donations, etc., is in the description below. All right. Love you, family. See you guys on the next show. Peace and shalom.